We clearly would be interested if North Korea has this nuclear weapon to give it to Japan to make sure they've got it, that Seoul's got it. But isn't there a risk in any military option to the people of South Korea?
Exactly. When I was at CIA and participated in war games and tabletop exercises, any kind of escalation of the conflict in that scenario would lead to, although the alliance won, hundreds of thousands of casualties, and that's before we estimated that North Korea had nuclear weapons. There are 25 million people in Seoul, 35 million in Tokyo, so any kind of conflict on the peninsula does risk all-out conflagration, including the use of nuclear weapons. Just to point out, we're focusing on the road-mobile ICBM, but North Korea has already had a capability to hit the United States with a fixed missile they call the Unha, we call the Taepodong. When they successfully launched satellites in 2012 and last year, the South Korean Navy dredged up the stages of that missile from the ocean floor, and the estimates was that it's from a fixed launcher, but it had a capability of 10,000 kilometers or perhaps 13,000 kilometers. That's either 40% of the continental U.S. or all the way down to Miami. We still don't think they have the nuclear weapons for it, but clearly they're working on it.
But what they launched yesterday was not from a mobile launcher. Is that correct? So
no, I'm sorry. The one they did launch yesterday was from a mobile launcher, but they did previously have capability of hitting the continental U.S. What we've heard from at least 4 U.S. four-star generals is that they assume, or have to assume for planning purposes, that North Korea already had the capability. Most outside experts don't think they're there yet. But clearly, even if we don't know where they are on the path of development, we know that their objective is to be able to not only threaten our allies and our bases at Guam, but also the continental U.S.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you, can we assume, and I know that I interviewed General John Kelly, Homeland Security, and he said there's no question they're going to have the capacity within the first term of the president. So can we assume that it is in the not too distant future that they'll have that ability? Given that you've got this lunatic, you've got his ability to hit the United States sooner than we expected, we have to take preemptive action. Yes, Colonel?
Well, look, I made the military action the 5th of 5.
But it's not.
We got to try all the rest of them first. Look, I was one of those guys that everybody said, if it's that important, send in the Marines. I'm a Marine. I don't want to send in the Marines unless we've exhausted every other possibility. And I just presented 4 others, besides military action, that haven't really been tried yet.
Yeah, but no, Colonel, with all due respect, you don't think that President Trump has already said to the president of China, Kim Jong-un, has to go? You don't think that...
No, whoa.
That was your third point.
What I said was, no. Look at...
Yes, it was.
Tell all of them at the summit here 2 days from now. Tell every one of them, nobody who does any business with this regime can do any business in the United States. It's a unilateral sanction. We don't need to wait for the UN to make another toothless resolution. We can do that tomorrow by executive order. And the fact is, everything that they've got came from somewhere else. And of course, the Iranians are a big supporter of this activity. The bottom line of it is the Chinese aren't going to help us, the Russians aren't going to help us until it hurts.
All right, and Dan, I'll go to you. With what is going on right now, do you think that the ability to stop this man is within our grasp, or do we have to get rid of him? I mean, I agree with what Colonel's saying. I don't think any more economic or diplomatic is going to work. So then what do we do?
Well, I think there's a misperception that we have used every option on the sanctions. That's simply not correct. When President Obama said North Korea is the most heavily sanctioned, the most cut-off nation on earth, he was flat out wrong. The U.S., the EU, the UN did things to Iran that we haven't done to North Korea. Last year was the first year that the U.S. had cumulatively sanctioned as many North Korean entities as we had cumulatively sanctioned those of Zimbabwe.
But with all due respect, do you think that Kim Jong-un cares about sanctions to his people?
Well, we can wean off the Chinese banks and businesses that have been engaging with North Korea using existing law. The last week, the Trump administration finally sanctioned a single Chinese bank. That's long overdue. I hope it's the tip of the iceberg and that we'll see follow-on secondary sanctions. That can have a dramatic effect on North Korea. We don't need to wait for Beijing.
All right. Thank you both, Colonel Ollie North and Dan Klingner. Okay.